Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and this time we are talking about how there is still a hope for a Nintendo Switch 2 teaser in 2023. And let me clarify, there being a hope does not mean I think it's most likely going to happen. I would say I'm still leaning in the direction of it not happening. But there has been this back and forth. There have been different things occurring that make me think, oh, perhaps this is a bit more likely. And then something else will happen and it will make me think, oh, perhaps not. And this week, that cycle continues. A few different things have occurred that have me circling back to this conversation. And that's what I would like to talk about today. Now, in an effort to get this out sooner than later, because I'm actually recording this fairly late into the day, the editing for this is going to be fairly simple. I'm just going to be kind of talking so you can sit back and relax. And then maybe putting on some Ocarina of Time gameplay from NSO in an effort for me to will into existence a hopeful eventual Ocarina of Time remake, which is definitely my own personal speculation and wishes and dreams, but we shall see. Now before going forward, let me point out that we are aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and enjoy the ride as we talk about Nintendo every day. So what's been going on that has me coming back to this conversation? So last week we got a report that a Mario Kart OLED bundle would be announced, and that has been announced. But there was no special trailer or any sort of fanfare to it. It wasn't largely marketed. This is simply a bundle that's coming in a few different regions. But the speculation that this bundle would also be announced around the time of them showcasing the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Wave 6 DLC is the case. Wave 6 DLC was showcased yesterday, and there are some significant updates to this DLC that I think add to this conversation. And what I'm getting at here is that there was a speculation that maybe something Switch 2 related could be happening in November, and a lot of the reasons why people were thinking this was in part because recently Nintendo privated their Switch First Look trailer, the most important trailer, and whenever Nintendo's privated a Switch reveal trailer, some type of hardware announcement has happened soon after. Last year they privated the OLED trailer, and that amounted to the Splatoon 3 OLED edition. So there's been a thinking that with Nintendo privating the Switch First Look trailer, the most important significant trailer of the entire Switch's life cycle, if not more so, there's been a thinking that they would maybe be announcing something more significant than just another OLED special edition. So with the reports of there being a Mario Kart OLED last week, some were thinking, myself included, that maybe it had to do with this. But then there was also this talk of there being Amiibo restocks, and whenever there's an Amiibo restocking, it tends to line up with some sort of significant Nintendo announcement, oftentimes something in a direct. And with the restocks for Smash, Zelda, Mario, and Metroid supposedly happening this month, last I heard November 10th, there's been a thinking that this unprecedented amount of Amiibo restocks could be lining with something else again. But I was thinking, well, what if it's not Switch 2 and it's something less significant, like maybe a new Mario Kart OLED bundle alongside the DLC that may have some content that could be related to these Amiibos. Well, we've gotten Wave 6, and it did have some extra content we weren't expecting. Not extra characters in the 4 that were already announced for it, but 18 new Mii costumes. And I thought that maybe these Mii costumes could be tied to it, but we've now seen the Mii costumes, and none of them are related to Smash, Zelda, or Metroid. Mario, yes, because, well, it's Mario Kart, that's obvious. But the point is here, the thinking that the Amiibo restocks are simply tied to this Mario Kart DLC, and that the Mario Kart OLED bundle is tied to Nintendo privating the Switch First Look trailer, it doesn't seem to add up too much. Now, it may be the case that Nintendo is putting out extra Amiibo restocks and announcing different bundles, all in an effort to push these holiday sales as much as possible, because the Switch is indeed reaching a saturation point. Switch 2 is likely coming out next year, and this may be the last time that the Switch is the primary focus for the holidays. So Nintendo's doing everything they can to push sales as much as possible, as many bundles as possible, more Amiibos, DLC announcements, everything they can. And what's interesting about this is that there was confirmation of another DLC coming out in time for the holidays, and that is the Pokemon DLC. Scarlet and Violet's final wave is also happening this year. There was a lot of talk that it would be happening early next year, but it looks like winter 2023 is indeed for this year. So that's going to help to push sales a little bit. The Indigo Disc is coming out December 14th. But what's interesting about this DLC is that back in the beginning of the year, there was this leak that came out, or rumor, that showed everything about the DLC that was announced shortly afterwards in the Pokemon Presents. But the one difference with this information was it also talked about there being a graphics patch for Wave 2, the Indigo Disc, for a next generation console, a next generation Switch. And we don't have that graphics patch for a next generation Switch, yet here we have the Indigo Disc coming out December 14th. And I think it's safe to say, now that we're in the beginning of November, that Nintendo definitely isn't announcing Switch 2 to come out this year to line up with this DLC. That just seems extremely unlikely. But it makes you wonder, is it possible that this leak/rumor was just totally false, but it just coincidentally got everything right? Or could it be that it was based off insider knowledge, but they were messing with us, or maybe some plans have changed? I think that's maybe a pretty good possibility. But I'll throw out another consideration here. What if there is going to be a graphics patch, but it's not going to be released to the public in time for December because there won't be a Switch 2. However, maybe they'll get a better build running for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet with this DLC, and that may be showcased in a Switch 2 teaser. That feels a bit conceivable to me. And if this is the case, with the DLC coming out this December, with the Switch first look trailer still being privated, and a basic Mario Kart OLED bundle not seeming like the proper reason for why that may have happened, and then also these Amiibo restocks that could still be for something else outside of Mario Kart DLC, maybe this idea, this hope of a Switch 2 teaser, can still happen. Now, I think I should note when it comes to the Switch first look trailer, it is possible that maybe it is related to music licensing issues, but that was the reasoning people used last year when the OLED trailer was privated, and that amounted to actually an OLED edition being announced. But it's also maybe possible Nintendo is privating that Switch first look trailer because they don't plan on putting it back out for a while, if ever, because maybe they're going to be phasing out the original Switches, and they just don't want that to be advertised anymore, because they are preparing for a new generation, but that doesn't mean an announcement happens this year. But there are other things going on here. I don't know too much on this subject, so I don't want to speak on it in too much detail, but there is this speculation going on right now that we may be approaching mass production for Switch 2. And if that does indeed happen, that could mean that Nintendo would announce Switch 2 very soon. Because once they start mass production, the chances of info on this system getting leaked out increase. And perhaps Nintendo wants to beat those leaks to the punch, and they want to control the messaging. And also, apparently, the last few hardwares Nintendo's put into mass production, they were announced around the same time. Now, the most common argument against this idea of a Switch 2 being teased this year is because it would impact holiday sales. Putting out all these different bundles, coming out with this DLC, coming out with this Amiibo restocks, why would Nintendo shoot themselves in the foot here and announce Switch 2 to dissuade some people from buying Switches this holiday? I think it's a valid consideration, but I also think we should take into consideration that, yes, Nintendo did announce Switch back in October of 2016 going to the holidays. The Wii U was dead, but the 3DS wasn't, and the Switch was a successor to both. And the 3DS, while yes, the ratio of games from remastered remake to brand new titles was definitely dipping more in the remaster remake direction, that system was still being supported and pushed all the way until 2019. So when it comes to the Switch, there's this expectation that it will also be supported for a few more years to come, even when Switch 2 is announced. So it still makes sense to push the Switch as much as they can. And maybe the bigger difference to take into consideration here is that the Switch in relation to the 3DS is a vast departure, but a Switch 2 may be more like an enhanced, direct successor to it. Something more iterative. So it may impact holiday sales even more so than what Switch did for 3DS back in 2016. So as you see, there's a back and forth here. It's hard to say for sure what side makes more sense because you can make arguments in either direction. But I think the main point is that we don't quite know what Nintendo is going to do. It's up for debate. There is still reason to have hope if you're really pulling for it to be announced this soon. And I'll point out one more thing that happened earlier this week that makes me wonder what may be going on here and if it's in any way, shape, or form tied to Switch 2. And that's this tease from Dr. Serkan Toto about what may be for something Zelda related to be announced, if not even coming out this year. He tweeted out ZR 2023, and this tweet was deleted, but in the past he has done something like this before where he tweeted Z2 2021, and this was teasing the Nintendo Direct that had a trailer showcasing Breath of the Wild 2 for a 2022 release date. Even though it was delayed later on, he knew about the trailer and the information in it, and he teased it to us. And so maybe this time he's teasing some sort of Zelda announcement for 2023. Now there's a thought that the ZR stands for Zelda Remaster, and 2023 would suggest it's coming out this year, so maybe a shadow drop, maybe it'll be announced at the Game Awards, and it'll be meant to kind of build off the hype of Tears of the Kingdom having a Game of the Year nomination. This is a possibility, and something like Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD, which has supposedly been done for a very long time, could be shadow dropped, and it may have nothing to do with Switch 2. But it also may not be Zelda remasters. What if it's a Zelda remake? What if Nintendo's going to announce or tease a Zelda remake? And if this is the case, maybe this Zelda remake is both a Switch and Switch 2 title, a cross-gen title. Maybe something like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, which is a remake, an ambitious one from Nintendo, and we don't know if it'll be for Switch 2 yet, but we do know that it has an interesting change in the button overlay. It's matching the Super Famicom colors, an iterative system. And Nintendo's done this before with the new Nintendo 3DS, and we've also seen this used in a few other games recently, including Super Mario RPG. And there's this thinking that if Switch 2 is also going to be an iterative system, then Nintendo may go with these colored buttons to help differentiate it a little bit, and it may be something we see in a few different games. Point being, Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door could be one of those examples. It may be a cross-generational title. And maybe a Zelda remake could be announced fairly soon to be the same thing. I've been making the argument that a Zelda remake has a pretty good chance to happen sooner than later, or some sort of Zelda remaster, basically something to showcase the abilities of the system, because typically when a big Zelda comes out to end a generation, what happens afterwards, less than 2 years later, once the next new system comes out, Nintendo has a Zelda release that showcases the abilities of that system that is some type of remaster. Some games that come to mind are Ocarina of Time 3D and Wind Waker HD. So maybe Nintendo will do something like that as well, and it'll be teased at the Game Awards. But since it could be a cross-gen title, they could just show the Switch version, or they could show like teaser footage that isn't necessarily for one game or another. It's just kind of like a trailer, kind of like that initial Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, the Tears of the Kingdom trailer, that wasn't quite the final gameplay. It's just something else I'm throwing out there. Maybe somehow the Zelda thing ties to Switch 2, although it can totally be not related to it at all. But it has me thinking that maybe something could happen at the Game Awards. We've seen consoles teased at the Game Awards in the past, and while Nintendo's presence at the Game Awards recently has been more subdued, I think maybe with a new generation coming up, they may be more inclined to have more of a presence there, as they did when the Switch was coming out back in the 2016, 2017, 2018 period where they had a big focus. Of course, some people think that maybe the Switch 2 teaser could happen sometime in November still. It's hard to say, there's a number of possibilities. I'm still thinking that more likely than not, Switch 2 won't be announced until sometime next year. But a teaser this year still isn't totally out of the question, so there is still hope, hence the title of the video. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.